So you can't go to the bathroom or anything. Thank you. Hello. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for this being here tonight for Policy and Finance Committee meeting, which I will now call to order. With that, we'll jump right in. We're both here, so there's our roll call, two of us. Councilmember Valdivia Alcala was unable to join us this evening, but two is a quorum, so we can move forward and make decisions if we need to, and hopefully get some action done this evening. With that, I'm going to make a motion to approve the minutes from our May 20th, 2022 meeting.
And I will second it.
All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Hope that was an aye.
It.
We didn't hear you. No. All right. And with that, I will turn it over to whoever is going to talk to us about the proposed ordinance on the Board of Building, Fire Appeals, and Residency.
Chairperson, this came to light probably a little over a year and a half ago. And what happened is this commission was not able to field an engineer to sit on the commission or the board. And so at that time, a letter was sent to the city manager Trout, asking permission to go outside the city limits and appoint somebody that lives in Shawnee County who is a practicing engineer. And so what was worked out, or really came to the end of the day, was I got with the city attorney and city attorney Stanley, and we talked about what this might look like. And so what we kind of came up with is if we expended everything we had inside city limits, I couldn't find anybody to sit on that particular committee, then we could open it up to somebody who lives in Shawnee County that had to work for a business engineering firm that was inside the city limits. And so we had that tie. And so that's kind of where this resolution is at, and kind of looking at it, it could possibly serve as a model moving forward for other different committees, boards, or councils, or whatever. So that's what happened here. They couldn't find anybody who was an engineer that lived inside the city limits that wanted to sit on this board and be that professional. And so they sent a letter requesting that, and so that's how we got here.
Okay. So I want to clarify the language. They have to actually operate a business, have a location in the city, right? They not just, as opposed to just, they do business in the city.
Right. For example, and I will only use it because I'm very familiar with, but Bartlett and West is inside the city limits of the city of Topeka. So I could be an engineer working from Bartlett and West, but say I live in the county.
Sure.
But the company that I work for is actually inside the city limits.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I just want to make sure and that's how I read it, but make sure that we're at least making sure they don't just come in, do business, and
right.
sit on the board, but never actually have a physical presence of any kind in the city or even in the county. Councilmember Nager, any questions?
Yes. My other question was going to be, it sounded from the way that you phrased that introduction, Chief, that city manager, excuse me, but that we would still give preference to people who are citizens of the city rather than people who live within the county if those people are available. Is that correct?
Yeah, the hopes are is we find somebody and we would exhaust all those means, and if we weren't able to find somebody to fit whatever that particular position would be, then we would look to somebody like that.
Excellent. Thank you. And then I also think it's worth clarifying, this person is going to be sitting on a board in order to serve the citizens of Topeka and their expertise. They're not being compensated for this work in any additional way, correct?
No, it's a volunteer board, just like all the others.
I just wanted to make sure. Thank you so much. That's all I have, Chair.
Thank you. As you mentioned, this may become a model for some others, and I think that may be what we start looking at. I do see a distinction between our committees and advisory boards that are purely citizen-based, say the Sustainability Board, which is versus these that are both required for some legal reasons and charter reasons, depending on what they exist and some of the issues we have there. So I don't have any. It doesn't give me any heartburn.
Mr. Chair, can I clarify? There's one other change that you should probably be aware of before you make a decision on this. If you look at the end of page 2, there is one additional change that changes the appeals process. Since this ordinance was being opened up, the city attorney's office used this as an opportunity to ask you to bring some consistency to our boards. Our other boards that are trade boards, such as our electrical board, our plumbing appeals board, our mechanical boards, all of those appeals go straight to district court rather than the governing body. So this board was an anomaly. And so we recommend that you change that for consistency, that decisions of this board can be appealed straight to district court. It saves a step before you could appeal the governing body and then to district court still. These are highly technical decisions, and so going straight to district court tends to provide some efficiency for the businesses that are appealing these decisions. So that was a recommendation from the city attorney's office on page 2 in the beginning of page 3.
So it doesn't take away their right to come holler at us as a council and see if we want to step in, but it expedites their ability to take it to the court to speed up whatever process they're in.
Correct. They still have the First Amendment right to come yell at you all they want.
Okay. Just checking. I assume so, but just checking. Any questions on that, Councilmember Nager?
No.
Anything else staff wants to add or include? We did get several emails that came in from various professionals who deal with either on this board or deal with this board who said, please do this for us. It would make everyone's life easier. So I just want to note that we did get some letters of support. Well, with that, unless there's an objection or anything else anyone wants to say, I would make a motion to approve and send this on to the full council.
And I would second that.
All right, well, all those in favor? That would be me. Would that be you?
Aye, yeah.
All right, thank you. All right, with that, we'll go on to another residency issue. Who's the lucky winner on this one to start?
So, coming up again, conversation that has always been ongoing on a residency ordinance for the city of Topeka and employees. And so, once again, that topic has come up. And so, we provided a resolution on residency and what that may look like. And it's pretty encompassing. The primary reason for residency, once again, is we are finding ourselves in a very difficult situation in trying to recruit professional standard positions, let alone all the others. But when we start talking about engineer positions, attorney positions, planning, and things like that, where you're getting into the technical field, it's getting harder and harder to recruit those individuals because a lot of them like to live in different places, so we say. We're a very mobile society at this point, and people like to want to live where they want to live. And so we also, when we talk about dual household, professional households, where one of them may work in Kansas City or Lawrence or wherever, but would enjoy working in the city of Topeka, but don't want to move from Lawrence or Kansas City per se, but willing to drive back and forth, that it opens up the possibility of recruiting and hiring those individuals. But that's the kind of the primary, and we're not just talking about professional services. We're talking really employees as a whole. Some people like to live in the county or in the country and stuff like that, and lived on farms or have residential farms, in Osage, Jeff County, Jackson County, and so opening up those employment opportunities to those individuals would help us as well.
All right, so this one always generates conversation from the public at large, and I'm sure it will as we come forward. I actually brought this up a year ago in this same committee, told everyone then we were going to look at it again. We had some presentations last year, explained to us some of our problems with hiring. Some of those were not related to residency, and we've started to look at those, but some of them directly, the applications that put on there very specifically, I have to live here as much as I want to, I can't, and they would give some various reasons across the board. So I've got a few things to say because at some point I know, because I've already talked to him, Mr. Rencher and a few others are going to go back and watch this meeting, and we want the public to understand why this is coming and being discussed again. So similar to the points the city manager brought up, I mean, we don't live in the same world we lived in 10, 20, 30 years ago. People are more transitory in terms of how they live. There are lots of people who want to live in smaller surrounding communities of larger cities, whether they want to live in Eudora so that one can work in Lawrence and one can work in Kansas City. Some people live in Topeka and work the other way. They want to drive into Olathe or down to Manhattan for various reasons. And we know that a lot of people who work in Topeka already in the private sector and for the state of Kansas don't live in Topeka as a whole. I'm a native Topekan, born and bred. My wife and I own businesses here, and I'll probably be buried in this city. I want everybody to live in this city, and I will fight tooth and nail to convince anyone and everyone that Topeka, as the capital city of Kansas, is the place that they should live. I also know I cannot force what I want upon the rest of the world. My responsibility, I believe, on the council is, yes, to protect our dollars, and I understand that if I'm paying them tax dollars, I want them to live in my city. I do understand that. But the flip side of that is I need to hire the best people possible to do the jobs that help the citizens. And when I brought this up a year ago, I spent quite a bit of time this past year talking to city employees themselves, asking them their opinions. And by city employees, I don't mean all the department heads. I mean the actual people who, are fixing water mains and who are doing those jobs in public works and on the lower line. Just ask them their thoughts and feedback. We've also heard from candidates for various jobs that simple things like, my kid's a freshman in high school and I want to work for Topeka, but I'm not pulling my kid out of a freshman in high school. And I think lots of parents understand that problem. It's not as simple as, well, too bad, I want you to live in my city and work for me. I wish it was, but it's just not. I also think it's important to look at what is happening across the rest of the state. There are basically 11 cities that have more than 50,000 population of 50,000, which doesn't sound like a lot, but we're only 2.9 million people in this state. And so it doesn't take long. And when Wichita eats up 300,000+ and the couple cities in the east have 200,000, it doesn't take long to get you to those top 11 cities. Only 2 of us left have this requirement of those top 11. And that's us, and that's Wyandotte KCK, which is a unified government. The advantage of working for the unified government is it's a unified government, so your borders are a little different and your ability to maneuver is, Wyandotte's actually itself the smallest. I think Wyandotte's the smallest county in Kansas, land-wise, but I mean, so even it is not the same situation as us. Salina recently was the last domino to fall. They just changed their policy. I talked with their city clerk out there. The one exception, which is in what we're proposing, is city manager has to live in the city, that all of our department heads, including police and fire, have to live in the county, and that certain designated employees across different departments have to live within a certain miles, because obviously we have various emergency teams and others that if you got to get to work in 10 minutes, that's a choice you make when you take that job, and those are a little different. So we've tried to, and that's not uncommon with a lot of those 9 other cities that have done this. And that applies to the counties too. Of the top 10 counties, again, only 2 of us left have this. That'd be Wyandotte County and us. I mean, we're not the county, obviously, but Shawnee County doesn't even have this requirement anymore. So we aren't just competing with trying to get people to come here in general. We're competing with all the cities who are of our comparable size and our peers across the state of Kansas to encourage them to move here. And how do I do that if even places like Lawrence, which has always been pretty, hey, we want you to live here and stay, do not leave Douglas County or else, even they have recognized it's time to make those changes. And so that is where this has come from. Where it will go, I don't know. I personally, obviously, clearly support it as a general rule, and did work with staff a lot to make sure that we did have those restrictions in there for certain employees. I don't know if it's written in here, but I know, because one of the things we talked about that will at least be rules is making sure that city vehicles still don't get to leave the city, right? You can go home to wherever, the county, I'm sorry. You can go home to wherever, but we will limit equipment and certain things like that so as not to put additional wear and tear. So those things have all been thought through, and I think at some point there will continue to be tighter restrictions to make sure that the people who do have the requirements really are living here, and that we will clean those up as we move forward. So those are my thoughts, and I just want to be put out there in the world as to where this came from, and why we've kind of reached that point where it at least needs to be discussed and hopefully passed again to help all our city employees. Councilmember Nager, any thoughts, comments, questions? Hey, you're wrong, Duncan. I don't know, whatever you want to.
I don't have anything rude to say.
You can say it politely.
But I think that I'm somebody who would love to see that preference would be given to people who live within the city and then therefore the county. But I do absolutely see where you're coming from with this. And I think this should come before the governing body so we can go ahead and explore it further. And so I appreciate all of the work and the thought that has gone into this, making sure that we're actually talking to the people on the ground and being as realistic about how can we get the most qualified candidates to make this city even better. I really appreciate everything that you've put into this. So I would support discussing it as in front of the governing body.
And that was going to be what I was going to ask tonight, was a motion not to approve it necessarily, but at least give permission for it to move forward on to the governing body at large, and we can put it on an agenda whenever seems fit in the next few months based on where our budget talks are and meetings, and then have that discussion there and go from there. So I will at least make that motion. I won't make the motion that we approve it per se, but I'll make the motion that we give staff permission to advance it on to the full governing body for consideration and discussion.
I think that's a great clarification. I second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. There we go. So I look forward to what I know will be a spirited conversation in the future. And that's okay. Those are good conversations sometimes. We don't want to be too boring. All right. A quick ARPA update. Who gets to do that? And I'll just say real quick, I mean, I didn't expect much, like a huge presentation. That's what I told staff. Just a quick look at the numbers. What I want to make sure that we leave here tonight, a couple things, reminding the public, you've got till July 31st, although I'm about to make a change to that here in a second slightly. And then make sure that I mean, as far as I can tell, it's gone pretty well. I think we've answered questions really well. I don't think we've had any major technical issues. All the questions have been specific to the process, and they haven't been to, this is so confusing, you guys have made it so hard, so, and the reason I want to bring that up is I want to make sure that when we leave here tonight, we all feel confident that we're good with our timeline, we don't need to give an extension. And I think one of the comments I made the other night to Cleo was just make sure that, oh yeah, we forgot to tell you the system was down for a week, which it wasn't. But I mean, just make sure we all feel good tonight knowing that we've kind of kept on track and we're okay with the deadline that we're at.
So Deputy Mayor, Chair, we're certainly comfortable with the deadline. There are still several applications that are outstanding, and we expect to see several more come in this week. So really, we've had nothing to request an extension.
Okay, great. Yeah, I know we're slightly over double digits on completed, and I think there's 30 plus in the queue, which by Friday will all hit enter, or Saturday. I think the one, and I don't know if we can just do this, or we need to make it an official motion. I guess that's why we have a staff attorney here, but we didn't realize when we said July 31st, because none of us looked at our calendar, that's a Sunday. And so we're concerned there may be some questions that come in on the weekend that we want to make sure we can get answered first thing Monday morning. So we would like to extend it by 24 hours basically until the end of day on Monday, August 1st. But I don't know if we need to.
Why don't we just make a motion and have it be clear that way?
Okay. Then I would move that we extend the ARPA deadline to the close of business on Monday, August 1st. And then that's when they'll be closed.
And I'll second that.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. So yeah, I mean, I do think we still have a ways to go because now we got to sift through all those applications once they're completed. But I have tried very hard to remind people, this is it. This is it. I will address one thing. I did have a question that came up to me, and I've tried to make this clear to people too. And this week, we probably, if it comes up, I'll continue to put it out there, is we have no idea what the final dollar amount requested will be. Could exceed it, may not exceed it. One of the comments made to me was, well, obviously if it doesn't exceed it, you'll just reopen this process. And I've been very clear to say that I do not personally believe that is what will happen, but I also do not speak for all of my colleagues. That will be a group decision by the entire governing body based on what that final number looks like. But I want everyone to know, do not make that assumption. Do not try to guess you think that's what will happen. if you want to ask for money, this is, you got the rest of this week to do it. Don't hope and pray and think that if we don't get it all, that this exact process will just be repeated with whatever that dollar amount is. So again, I've tried to make that clear, and I just keep telling everyone else, make that clear to them too. Don't let them make an assumption that if that's the case, that will be the process again, because I don't know that that will be. So just wanted to put that once more out into the universe. So, any other comments or questions on ARPA? Anything else on that, Councilmember Nager?
Nope.
All right. With that, we will move to our legislative agenda. We're trying to stay ahead of the curve here. As you recall, last year when this came up, it was basically the legislature started not quite the next day, but it felt like it, and we were trying to figure out what should our agenda be. We got to get this figured out, give our lobbyists some direction, and know what to look out for. And so our goal is to, A, stay ahead of that, because these things need to start being planned for now before they get to January, and B, next month the League of Kansas Municipalities will come together and start discussing these issues, and we want to see where we are in line with those, and we also have an issue we want to put in front of them to see if we can get their support. So having this discussion today gives us the time to make sure that happens. So with that, I will turn it over to, I guess, whoever's going to give that presentation or discussion.
I believe you have Whitney Dameron here to give insight on various issues, but I will just give you an overview of what's in your packet. You have from me a memo explaining the legislative resolution that is in front of you. For your initial version of legislative resolutions, recognizing that it's subject to change, I put in there the common things that you routinely put in your legislative resolution, pulling from last year's resolution, as well as some of the big ticket items from some of the league stuff, such as home rule. As a city, we generally always support home rule and the ability of the governing body to make the choices that's best for our local citizens. Next, we move on to taxing and spending powers, believing that our local governing body is the best person to decide our taxing and spending. The business competition in there is from last year's, as well as the sales tax. And then unfunded mandates. Then moving on to public safety. The first item is common consumption, and this is a new area for you. In your packet, you will see some suggested language for a statutory change to common consumption. This change came out of an intercity visit with GTP, and recognizing that there's a lot that could be done in our community with Evergy Plaza and Rosebud Park and Noto if the common consumption rules were changed to allow the governing body to choose whether or not a street would need to be closed inside a common consumption zone. That would require a statutory change, so that is one that we are recommending. Then you move on to abandoned housing and mental health. Those are carryover items from last year. Docking building that continues to be upright is continued to carry over. The KDHE lab, Menigers, I don't know if that's continued to be a priority for you, but it was in last year's agenda. Same with broadband and ARPA. And then also in your handout is the League's legislative policy agenda in case there are other areas that you want to consider. And the memo discusses some of the big ticket items that are still hanging out there. And Whitney, I'm sure, will be happy to talk about any of those kind of items if you as a governing body or as a committee wanted to take a particular topic on it. So some of the big outstanding items at the State House include medical marijuana, housing rental inspections, open records is something that's always fiddled with every year, economic development, utility franchises, and then other kind of taxing power issues. So Whitney is here if you have any questions on anything that you think the legislature might do, or if you want feedback or anything really, you just want to listen to Whitney. He's here to answer any questions.
Whitney, did you have anything you wanted to say before we either had any questions or comments? Or
happy to make a few brief comments tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, Chair Duncan and Committee Member Nager. You have documents that Amanda has prepared. You probably more so than most in this room would understand the common consumption area issue, Chairman Duncan, and seeing the language, I know that's something that the state of Kansas has kind of ventured into a couple of times and made some inroads on that particular issue over the last decade or so. Kansas sometimes a little bit slow to bring about change in liquor laws. It's not something, I don't think anymore, that is a significant reach for the legislature to consider, as long as we have support, obviously from the community, but from law enforcement sides who wants to make sure that public safety issues are addressed, both from kind of a statewide issue, the law enforcement lobbyists that do work in the State House, as well as City of Topeka, but some of the other major metropolitan areas that may take a look at this. Certainly Wichita, I think, would be interested. Perhaps some of the cities in Johnson County, Lenexa, Overland Park, have kind of looked at some of these things in the past. So not insurmountable, and probably something that is workable in the legislative process. Kind of from a broader perspective, as we know, it is an election year, both for statewide constitutional offices and the House. We're going to see significant change in the House. In particular, we're going to have new leadership, new Speaker of the House, Majority Leader, and Speaker Pro Tem. We're also going to have new rank and file members. We're going to have new committee chairs. Could have a new chair of Federal and State Affairs, or members as well. City of Topeka does not have any members on either of the House or Senate Federal and State Affairs Committee, with the exception of, I believe, Vic Miller on the House side. But that could change as well. But in any event, this kind of broad perspective of what we're looking at, as the chairman mentioned, the league will start some discussions with municipal lobbyists here in the next 30 to 60 days. We'll be sending out invitations on that, I'm sure, and that'll occupy the chairman's time as well with his new position. Congratulations.
Thank you.
But we'll bring that information back to the city and kind of compare and contrast with what the city's agenda is and what the league is in other cities as well.
Well, as you and I know, we'll see who wins and who loses in the next couple months, and then what that means for all of our hard work. So, is there anything not on here that we've tried to get done in the past that we should try again, as foolish as it might be? I mean, I know we bump our heads with the housing stuff, and it's kind of slightly pie in the sky, but I mean, there's still maybe value in at least.
Yeah, I don't know that the housing issue gets any easier. Even when we had some success and had a bill to the governor that was vetoed under Governor Brownback, the legislature continues to be conservative, continues to side with property rights to the detriment of those who want to take care of their property. Kind of my opinion. I've made that point, and others have made that point in the legislative process, but it's been a significant challenge. I think if we had perhaps other opportunities or legislation that might make a difference in that area that took care of some or addressed some of the concerns of the previous legislation in regards to transferring property from one person to another, we might have more success in the legislative process.
I know that docking is what I'll call half decided, because who knows? Are we pretty confident that the KDHE lab is decided? I mean, it's going to go in that parking lot, or is that still sort of?
I think that's been decided, and I believe they've selected a contractor.
Okay, that's what I thought, and so we don't think that's going to change. And the reason I asked that is one of the things we have on our position is that we support it within the city limits, which, I mean, we just made a tweak to say we still support current location is selected in downtown, which it's not going to change, but if something does come up, and make sure that that's our.
I think that's set, and Department of Administration is moving forward on that. I made an inquiry today, knowing this meeting was happening, about the status of docking. The last I had heard about that, they had narrowed it down to 3 potential contractors, and we're in the process of going through that RFQ process.
Okay. Councilmember Nayer, do you have any comments or questions, or?
I don't have anything in addition to what you've already asked. Thank you.
My plan is to try to send this out to the governing body and say, are there any issues you want us to address, consider, add before we do any sort of final approval of it at the larger meeting? And then if there is, we can add it before we have the discussion in the meeting. So something will still come up. At least tell them to send me any suggestions before that, and then be able to go from there. So hopefully we'll have some of that before the full council meeting, whenever that is. I don't know when we'll put this on there. Any ideas? Sometime in August?
So the leaks policy meetings start August 16th. So I guess the question for you is if you would like it to be at the council before then, so you could have the league potentially introduce the common consumption area as an item for the league to consider, including in their SMP. So if so, then you probably do need to go ahead and put it on the council agenda in August 9th, because their meetings start the 16th.
Yep, let's do that. Worst case scenario, if everyone's not ready to approve the whole package, I can make the case for the common consumption thing. So can we at least get an approval that it's okay to move this forward while we figure out the other, since that meeting's coming up? And it's just for the world out there. The big change we want to make is to change a shall to a may, and boom, should solve our problem. Add a little signage, but we'll see if that's. We tried to go with the simplest solution, but one word can also create chaos. So we'll see how that goes. So yeah, let's get it on the August 9th and get it out from there. I don't think we do need to approve this to send it out, or I don't.
It would be cleaner, I suppose, if you made a motion.
No, that's fine. I would then move to approve and send this forward to the full governing body.
I will second.
In favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, then we will get that done for August 9th. Other items. I have no other items. Councilmember Nager, do you have any other items?
I have no other items.
I know we have our next meeting scheduled. Don't ask me when that is, but I know it's on our calendars. It's in there somewhere. We will probably revisit any of this if it comes back to us from the governing body. We will also primarily use that to start the ARPA process, and have that conversation and go from there. So for the public wondering how fast we're going to get to those applications, I don't know, Liz, do you remember when that meeting is? It's late. It's like third or fourth. It's mid to late August. So we'll get that out there, but that will be the first real conversation. So if people are thinking that the deadline ends on August 1, we're going to have decisions right quick. No, we're going to take that time to vet those and then have an open discussion at the next Policy and Finance before we take any steps to approve, deny, move forward, or anything. So that'll be that August meeting. Anything else from staff? No? Going once? Going twice? Well, all right. Then I say we should adjourn. How about it, Councilmember Nager?
Sounds great.
Have a good night.
Thank you, everybody.